Please remain standing if you are able for the reading of the gospel, Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 16. This is the parable of the workers in the vineyard. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. When he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around, and he said to them, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first." When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last. There is a second reading this morning from Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated.
From ancient India comes this story of a student and his master. One day they were meeting, and the master decided to explain his theory of creation to the student. All creation, he said, all the birds in the air, the trees, the sky, the clouds, the mountains, the rivers, everything that you see all about you, all of it rests on a gigantic turtle. The student was taken aback. "A turtle?" "Sure," said the master. The student thought for a while, and being the inquisitive sort, the kind that some of you are, said, "Well, if it all rests on a turtle, what's underneath the turtle?" "Well," said the master, not in the least bit fazed, "on that turtle is resting on an even bigger turtle." The student was a little bit skeptical by this time and said, "Well, if it's all resting on an even bigger turtle, what's underneath that turtle?" Master said, "An even bigger turtle." The student couldn't believe his ears. And he asked another time, "Well, and that turtle, let me guess, it's resting on, yes, an even bigger turtle." "Of course," said the master, finally pleased, "it's turtles all the way down." When you get all the way down to the heart of who we are as United Methodists, it comes down to a very unique understanding of salvation, of what God does and about our response. It's the Wesleyan way. And more than any other scripture, the one that we read just at the very end there was the most common subject of John Wesley's sermon. "For by grace have you been saved through faith, And this not the result of works, lest anyone should boast. It is the gift of God. It is grace that created us, grace that saves us, grace that will lead us home. Usually, when we speak of grace, we think about it as undeserved mercy. It's both an observation about God's nature and about our human response. God is loving and good and unending in God's mercy. And more often than not, when he pictured God, John Wesley drew on a parental model rather than a monarchical model to describe God, which is to say, he thought about God like a parent, not as a judge or a king. And I would encourage you, as you think about God, to pay attention to those dominant models that are operative in your life. What's your primary model for God? And just because he understood and thought about God as a parent didn't mean that for Wesley and for Methodists that we don't believe that we need help. We do need help. A little help, sometimes a whole lot of it, right? I don't know about you, but I need a whole lot of help. And the key to understanding this relationship with grace and faith is to understand that God always takes the initiative. Before we could ever do anything, God has taken the initiative with us. If you can memorize Ephesians 2:8, then you've got the genius of Methodist understanding of salvation. For by grace have you been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not the result of works, lest any of us should boast. God alone can open the door through which salvation can come. It's then up to us to walk through that door. And if you pictured it graphically, this is what it would look like. God taking the initiative, human beings responding. This is our Wesleyan way. And this is faith. It's our response. John Wesley liked to quote all the time Augustine's axiom, God who made us without ourselves will not save us without ourselves. Or the way Wesley put it, first, God works, therefore you can work. Second, God works, therefore you must work. This is the Wesleyan way. Responsible grace. Grace comes first, then comes our response. And in a very real way, to be Methodist is to hold these two kind of parts of the salvific process in a creative tension, or what one person called a conjunctive theology. We believe this and that. Or as what one Methodist historian said about Wesley, like a good oarsman, he looked one way and rowed another way. When it comes to the core of who we are and how we are saved, look one way, but row another. Row, row, row. To that end, Jesus told a story. We call his stories parables. They're puzzles. They're puzzles that cause us to look at things one way, but respond in another. So it is with today's parable. A man owns a vineyard, right? It's that time of year when the grapes are absolutely bursting forth on the vine with the biggest, ripest, most pregnant kind of fruit, juicy and succulent, coming off the vine practically by themselves. Except this man really does need somebody to pull them off. And so he goes into the town square at 6 a.m. one day and finds a bunch of folk standing around, and he negotiates with them on a contract. I'll give you X amount, he says, for the day's wage. They agree, it's fair. They come to work. They're out working in the fields. About 9 a.m., the owner of the vineyard, decides he needs some more help, so he goes back into town, gets some more workers, brings them back to the vineyard, and they get to work. Again, at 12 o'clock, he needs more, and he goes back to town. And then again at 3 o'clock, he's back at it. Now, in that culture, the workday was a 12-hour workday. People worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., from dawn to dusk, right? But this man suddenly does, in Jesus' story, a very strange thing. At 5 o'clock, with just 1 hour left in the day, he goes back into town. And once again, he finds some people standing around, and he asks them, "Why are you standing idle all day?" "Because no one hired us," they say. Duh, right? Now, I don't know about you, but I have a pretty good idea about the kind of people that no one has hired, right? Can you picture them? They're lazy. Maybe they'd been sleeping off a good drunk that night, or they were meth addicts, or they'd had a bad work history, and when people pulled up their credit report, it was not a good picture. It was that group of people to whom the vineyard owner goes for the very last time. At 5 o'clock, he says, "Would you at least come and work for me for 1 hour?" Now, some of them are thinking probably, "Yeah, we can work an hour, at least get enough wine for tonight." And so they go to work, right alongside those who'd worked 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, and for the whole 12 hours. And then, suddenly, after an hour of work, the whistle blows. Yabba dabba doo! That was a cultural reference, in case you might have missed it. "Line them all up," says the boss to the foreman. "Start with the latecomers and then work your way down to those who'd been here all day." Now, each worker gets an envelope, right? And the 1 hour folk open theirs, and they can't believe their eyes. They'd gotten a full day's wage. There were high fives and whoops and hollering all around. But those down at the end of the line start wondering what's going on, so they ask, and pretty soon word comes down to them. They got a whole day's wage. And as they get their envelope, they're thinking, whoa, you know what they're thinking, right? But then they open it and, wait a minute, they just got a full day's wage too. This isn't fair. What are you talking about? We worked 12 long, sweaty hours, and you give those bums who dilly-dallied all day and picked just a few grapes in the setting sun the same pay as us? I don't know about you all, but I can feel their rage. I feel the pain in their voice. It happened to me once again this week. Thursday night, Beth and I, Pastor Debbie gave us a night off from the desserts, right? Because she's a hard taskmaster. No, I'm just kidding, Debbie. Just kidding. Anyway, so we have a night off, and we're going to go to have dinner with some friends of ours who live in Fenton. And we leave at 5 o'clock, thinking from 5 o'clock, that's plenty of time, right? We stop by Schnucks on the way out of town to get them a gift to take to their house. And we get on First Capitol, headed on 70. And as soon as we get onto get onto 70, oh man, we made a mistake. It is backed up way back there, right? We get in the first lane, and it took us, no kidding, my GPS has the time that we're arriving, and I'm watching the time click by, and I'm seeing it took us 20 minutes just to get to the 370 bridge. 20 minutes. And my blood pressure is starting to to eke up there because I'm kind of one of those persons who always likes to be on time, or if not better yet, early. And just as we're getting close to the bridge, I look in my rear view mirror and I see these flashing lights, right? It's a tow truck. Hot diggity dog. So I, with the kindness of somebody around me, I ease into the left lane to give the tow truck driver a chance to get by. And just as he gets by, this yahoo in a sports car whips around and goes to the front. Nobody here was in a sports car at about 5:20 Thursday night, I hope. It would be so much my luck. Anyway, this person whips in right behind the tow truck and goes all the way up to the front of the line and then gets over and is gone. And my blood pressure at this point was up to about here. And Beth is up there and she can testify that I was about ready to blow. Do you know what it is to feel like things aren't fair? Maybe you're a student and you're here today and you know what it is to study really hard because you're conscientious that way, right? And so you got a big test coming up and you give it your all. You just are sweating it, making sure that you know everything that there can be possibly to know. And the test comes and you get the grade back and you got an A. And then you run into little Miss Missy, you know, that cutie pie who never studies and plays around and doodles at her desk and twiddles her hair. And she says, bouncing along, "What'd you get?" And you're kind of nice person and you say to her, "Well, you know," but she presses. And so you kind of hem and you haw and you say, "Well, I got an A." And she says, "Cool, me too." Don't you feel like your work has been devalued? One more example. You've got a job and you get a salary and there are people over you in a supervisory position. And word comes down that everybody is getting this year a 3% raise. And everybody should be happy. But then you think about it and you think, you know, the people who are over me, they come in just as the day is starting, but I come in early and I stay late and they never stay late. And they make a big whopping salary compared to what I make. And we are all getting 3%. Well, that means they're getting way more than I'm getting. I don't know about you. But in my world, that just doesn't feel fair. But here's how the boss replies. To the leader of the grievance committee, he says, "Listen, pal, I've done you no wrong. Didn't we agree to a daily wage? Take what you earn and get out. Am I not allowed to choose to do with my money as I want? And are you envious because I'm generous?" The parable doesn't report an answer to that question. It just hangs out there in the air. Are you envious because I am generous? How would you respond? And why is it that in hearing this story, we all somehow identify with the ones who feel cheated? How did Jesus know that almost all of us would respond like those who felt like they didn't get enough? Maybe, you think, he knew our way of and our habit of the sideways glance, of always looking at our sisters and our brothers to see what they're getting and measuring our lives against theirs. Don't you think maybe he told this story to expose that rather unpleasant part of ourselves? As if to say, Get over it already. How? Maybe by looking at which end of the line we're really standing in. I mean, do we really fit among those who have earned their salvation? Who have done everything that Christ asked of them? Do we really fit those who are perfect in their response to God's askings of us? Have we really been so hard at it and so good at it from the dawn to the dusk of our lives that we have the right to demand or to bargain with God? And while we're at it, how would you say we've held up to our part of the bargain? Friends, we have no bargain with God whatsoever. God never promised to any of us a wage. God just came to find us and to call us to a higher purpose, crowned us with meaning, and called us into the company of those who really are supremely blessed. Standing in the payment line, we've been much too quick to notice and to resent those whose generosities have apparently exceeded our own. So how about it? How about if we rub our eyes and look again? This isn't the bargaining end of the line you and I are standing in. It's the blessed line where grace abounds and where there's good reason for us to be leaping and jumping and whooping and giving high fives all around. Before us is the very gift of life. Who among us has earned this? And who among us can begrudge the wonder of God who gives it all? Let this be our reason for laughing and singing and jumping and whooping and high fives all around. That God is intensely and unrelentingly and beautifully unfair. God is unfair. And aren't we glad? This is grace. How will you, how will we respond?